Welcome, everyone. I'm Cynthia Bland. I'm excited to be the chair and organizer of our session on the role of creativity and innovation in statistics and data science. And I'm pleased to be joined today by a fabulous team of speakers. We have RENEE, SONALI, and Philip, who will be guiding us through their experiences in statistics and data science. And their information is here and is also in the program book. And I want to make sure that we get to their great talks. So I will go ahead and stop sharing and first welcome RENEE to speak about her experience. Turn it over to you, RENEE. RENEE, we'll just need to unmute you first. Oh, there we go.
All right. Get my screen set up. All right, welcome everybody. I'm RENEE TEATE, and I'm going to be talking about curiosity, creativity, and communication in the practice of data science. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm coming to you live from Harrisonburg, Virginia in the United States. I know we have an international audience here. I went to school at JMU and UVA. I worked with data for about 20 years, so I have background as a database developer, data analyst, and data scientist. Some people know me from the Becoming a Data Scientist podcast and learning community on Twitter. I'm now the Senior Director of Data Science at HelioCampus, which is a higher ed tech startup, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the things we do there throughout the talk. And I wrote a book called SQL for Data Scientists. So just so you know a little bit about me before I dive in. So a lot of you have probably seen data science Venn diagrams. Early on in 2013 to 2016 or so, these were circulating heavily in terms of trying to define what is data scientist, what do data scientists do? And so we know that data science involves some sort of math and statistics knowledge, some sort of hacking, computer science, programming knowledge, and domain expertise. But these are, the technical sides of data science. So I developed another Venn diagram back then, and I wanted to kind of revive that and talk a little bit more in detail about this Venn diagram in terms of traits that are common to successful data scientists. When I had my podcast, all of the podcast speakers had either mentioned these things as traits they themselves valued and thought set them apart as data scientists, or that when they're hiring, they're looking at data scientists with these traits. So I wanted to talk through this in detail, and this is going to be the focus of my presentation. So the first one is curiosity. So I wanted to kind of talk about what is a curious data scientist. I think to get into this field, a lot of people are, naturally curious people. If you're entering a relatively new field, it takes a lot of creativity, and there's just a lot of different types of work under the umbrella of data science. So you have to kind of be curious to get in and learn all these new tools and things to become a data scientist. But I think curious data scientists are really interested in the problem at hand. How does this work? How does a specific thing work that's in front of me? You can zoom out and see a systemic view and big picture systems, or zoom in and look at small details, understand what's going on with my data here. Is there a problem? And really explore the data. So we talk about exploratory data analysis. I think that's a process that involves a lot of curiosity, asking questions about what's going on here. What are the correlations? What can I uncover that will help me build a good model? Also, jumping between a wide variety of tasks. In my role at HelioCampus and all the people on my team, we are client-facing. We have external clients, which are people at universities and colleges and higher ed. We have internal clients when we're building teams for our tools for our colleagues and people on different teams. We have a lot of different people across the institutions that and within our company that we work with. So we have to constantly task switch. And I think it takes a lot of curiosity to be comfortable with that and trying to figure out, what does it take for me to do this well? What does it take for me to do that well? What are we talking about here? And constantly problem solving and trying to understand the context of your work. And curious data scientists also ask really good questions and go beyond the immediate question at hand. So I'm going to talk a lot about customers in this talk, but it could be your manager. So whatever context you're in, if your customer is just your manager assigning you a task, or if it's an external user, or if it's an internal user of a tool, it's whoever is receiving your work. But a lot of times they'll have something specific that they've tasked you with doing, but coming up with all the questions that surround that and diving a little deeper, coming up with questions that they might not have even thought of yet, but that you expect as a user they're going to be asking later, takes a lot of curiosity. Okay, so with Venn diagrams, we have to talk about these intersections as well as the different circles, right? So a data scientist who is not so curious, but they do have the other two elements of creative problem solving and communication, that kind of person is going to get the job done. They're going to have the job requirements, task requirements. They're going to communicate the results. They're doing fine. Like there's not going to be any problems with them in terms of job success. However, they're not necessarily going to set themselves apart from other data scientists without that curiosity. So they're answering the questions they're asked, but they're not going beyond and adding those valuable insights that come when you really try to understand the whole context of the work that you're doing. And I have a little image for each of these. So this one is kind of like an iceberg, right? If you're a creative problem solver and you can communicate, you see the iceberg, you know how to deal with it, but you don't necessarily know the depth of the iceberg, like what's going on under the hood. That's where the curiosity comes into play, digging a little deeper. So for my own career, how am I using curiosity? One thing is that I had to learn how to apply my data analytics skills and database skills and data science skills to higher ed. I did work at a university before I was at HelioCampus, but I was mostly working with alumni and fundraising data. So working at HelioCampus, I had to learn about student success. What does student success mean? What are all the elements of retention and on-time graduation? What is correlated with this? What data is the university even collecting that we can look at for trying to predict student success, trying to predict enrollment? So really having to understand a whole new industry. This is probably kind of common in data science, right? Because our skills can apply across industries. So that's one aspect of curiosity, is developing that whole new domain expertise, something I had to do and I'm constantly doing every day, even years into this process, learning about all the different elements of higher ed, the different people involved, and all the different data there, and what's not captured by the data. What might be going on with the student that's not in our data set that we could come up with as some data point we should collect. So there's a lot of curiosity involved in my work in higher ed. And if I switched industries, same thing, it would be a whole new learning process. So data scientists are always learning. Okay, what about the creative problem solving? So this is a person who a creative problem solver can put themselves in another person's shoes and understand, why are they asking for this thing? So you have a task, you need to understand what are they really getting at? So part of this is that understanding of the requirements, and that's part of problem solving, right? Like even figuring out what the problem is that we're dealing with right now. And then digging deeper while also prioritizing. So you're solving the customer's problem, your manager's problem. You're also solving your own problem. You have a lot of tasks to do, probably not a lot of time. Data science is the type of work that can be done iteratively and can go on forever if you don't know how to have stopping conditions, set your limits. So really understanding how to prioritize the work is something that's helped me. And then I think being able to focus on the problem at hand, you've got that curiosity that can kind of take you down a rabbit trail, but how do you hone it in and say, okay, let's actually get a solution here. Another thing about a creative problem solver is they don't get stuck. So you got to try to keep trying different angles, pivoting, trying to dig at the problem from different approaches. So data scientists are very tenacious, but you can't be stubborn and get stuck in your way of doing something. So you're constantly working around the problems, right? And like I said, it's an iterative process. There's always changing tools and techniques. So you're constantly problem solving technical problems, like how do I get this tool to work? How do I apply this technique to this particular job at hand? And so it takes a lot of creativity to just work in this domain. And you might not think of it, you're not necessarily generating art or something like that. You might be as a data scientist, but you might not feel like that type of creativity, but you have to be creative to use this whole, realm of tools and techniques for a whole wide range of problems and figure out how the pieces go together. So looking at this Venn diagram, if you have the curiosity and communication, you're asking really good questions, you're understanding the problem in its broader context, you're learning a ton, you might even become a really good expert on this topic in the domain you're in. You could even lecture about it, right? You really understand what's going on and help other people understand. But if you're not a creative problem solver, you're not giving any actionable solutions. So in a business context, people are looking for data people that can help them make decisions, that can help them take actions, that have a result from their work that is applicable in the real world. And so you have to understand what problem you're trying to solve and what your solution means so that you can deliver that. So that's what you're missing if you don't have the creative problem solving. You might have really great understanding of what's going on, but you're not delivering something that solves a problem using that creativity to get at the solution. So in this case, I was thinking of a maze. So this could be, you're communicating with your team members with walkie-talkies, navigating a maze. You really understand the maze. You can see what's going on. You understand the concept of the maze, and you're communicating with each other. Here's where I am. Here's where you're at. Here's how the maze looks. And somebody just like, can you just get us out of here, please? So like, solve the problem, beyond just learning about your surroundings. So in my own career, this comes from prioritizing the tasks. So like I talked about, I have limited time and a lot of different tasks, right? What do I automate? What do I build a tool for? What is there already an existing tool for and I don't need to reinvent the wheel? What do I need to work on to get this client closer to their solution to help them make a decision? When do I stop iterating on this model to get that infinitesimal improvement and the evaluation metrics? So in my career, a lot of the problem solving is for myself and my own project management, but also making sure I'm solving the client's problems and I have that in mind so that if I can't do everything I want to do for that client in the time allotted, which portions of the tasks that I could choose from will really get them closest to their goal. Okay, so communication. This is a huge part of data science. If you have strong communication skills, you can operate well within this complex system of data science in different industries. You're understanding the client requirements. You're a good listener, so you understand their needs. You can tie that into the business needs and tie the actual analysis in with the deliverable. You're communicating with all kinds of people, technical people, business people. You've got data engineers, stakeholders, other data scientists, other data analysts. Usually you need a lot of really strong written communication skills nowadays as well, with being remote, for example. So communication is really key. A good communicator is also checking in regularly with those stakeholders. Am I seeing this right? Am I understanding your needs? Am I working on the right problem? And you understand how what you're building is going to be applied. So you can communicate how people should use the results of your work and take an action. You're also building tools that other people can use. So a lot of people are really good data scientists for themselves and building a model and may not be documenting as well as they should or communicating these results to others. And so if you're really good at communicating, it'll help you build things for other people to use. Okay, so with this Venn diagram, if you're strong on the curiosity and creative problem solving, you might really understand the problem and the context, creatively come up with an actionable solution. Your work is great. But if you can't communicate that and that's unintelligible to other people, that's just basically useless. Or if you're not a good listener, you might be working on the wrong problem altogether. So you've done a great job, but you're not actually working on what people had hoped you would be working on. And so this is the image I have here is, a crazy road sign. Like there's a lot of good work going on there, but what the heck am I supposed to do right now? What are you communicating to me? This looks like a mess. So from my own career, one communication issue I had is when I thought I was communicating with the right people. I was talking to some business stakeholders. They were defining what they wanted me to build. I was building an interface to some data. Turns out I wasn't talking to the actual end users. And I never asked that question of like, who are the actual final end users of this work? So I honed it to what these stakeholders told me they wanted. Then when it came to get in front of time to train the actual users, they said, oh my gosh, another system for us to log into. Like, we have 3 other systems. We do not need another interface. Like, this is just a burden to us. Like, yeah, it's great information, but I'm barely ever going to be logging in there. So what we ended up doing is redesigning so we could take away their need for one of the other logins and say, all right, you've got 3 systems to log into. Let's pull data from one of those systems into this new one so we can replace one of your logins instead of adding to your burden. So yeah, we had some adoption issues. A lot of rework was required. And because I didn't ask the question of, are you the eventual end user? Can I talk to an end user? Let's make sure that we're actually meeting their requirements and this isn't just being imposed on them. And this is a slide I sneak into every presentation I give, the whole data analysis process. This takes that creativity, creative problem solving, the curiosity, creative problem solving, and the communication to do this process of figuring out what question am I being asked from a business perspective? How do I convert that into a data question? How do I do the analysis to turn that into an answer to that data question and then convert it back to a business answer so it's actually usable? So this whole process uses all the components of that Venn diagram. So I think I'm at time, but just wanted to leave you there with my information, and I think we're going to come back at the end and have some Q&A. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Renee. So certainly lots of appreciation with the audience here. So if you do have questions, we'd love for you to put them into our Q&A feature, and we'll be able to come back to those in a little bit. So we'll hear next from SONALI GARG with her experience. So SONALI, we'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Cynthia. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
So thank you, Renee, for the wonderful presentation. I think I will appreciate, and like other scientists, that communication is very, very important, and then we often fail to ask the right questions and to the right people. So with that, I probably will jump into my presentation, which basically is telling you the role of creativity and innovation in data science and statistics. It's totally, I think I'll second to your thought, whatever you said, Renee, and probably piggyback on yours for that perfect opportunity. So before I start, just a little bit about me. I am, one second, I think my presentation is. Is it better now? Okay.
Could you flip the swap displays? I think that would be a better view for folks. So up at the top, swap displays. Yeah.
One second. This one?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Okay, just a little bit about me. I live in Boston with my husband and 2 beautiful daughters. I have a master's and a bachelor's degree in statistics or biostatistics. I have worked in the world of clinical trials for more than 16 years. And I recently was at a smaller biotech called Imago BioSciences. My job just ended recently, and I am currently between jobs. And of course, I have to say that all the thoughts presented here are solely mine, and in no way represent my employers or prior employers. So, creativity opportunities in randomized clinical trials. Clinical trials, as we all know, are considered golden standards in terms of getting the drug into the market from external, from inception of the molecule versus whatever we are trying to get to get the drug in the market. They are considered golden rules because they basically minimize the bias or any confounding factors just because they use randomization for the trial, for all the work. And in the world of clinical trials, there are many people, and it takes a lot of effort of many people to get the drug into the market. But when it comes to data analysis, there are three main people who are, or I should say, group of people who actually get the work done: statisticians, clinical data managers, and statistical programmers. So clinical data managers are the people who get to the data the very first time as the data is collected, or actually even before it's collected. how the data should be collected according to the protocol, according to what the plan is. They basically first form the case report form, which is basically a questionnaire kind of a thing where you collect the data on. And in these ways, it's called ECRF, which is basically electronic case report forms. So clinical data managers, along with the teamwork of statisticians and statistical programmers, first create a case report form wherein the data is collected. And as the data comes in, data managers look at the data and make sure the data is actually clean. And if there are no discrepancies in the data, all the forms in the CRF, in the casebook report, in the casebook, are actually reconciling with each other. For example, a date at one form is not conflicting with another date, meaning something like a date of birth. Somewhere it says January 76, otherwise it's placed February 76. So clinical data managers are one who actually look at that data first and make sure that it's clean to be used. Statisticians are, of course, very important. They once the protocol is built, they make sure according to what should be the data analysis, how should the data analysis be performed, what statistical methods we should be using, and what are the endpoints, and therefore, are we collecting the right data, or are we missing some data? It's very important to make sure that we collect the optimum amount of data, because we cannot have too little or too much of data. Whatever data we collect, we are bound to submit it to the regulatory agencies, so we don't want to collect extraneous data. And then comes the statistical programmers, where they are actually a bridge between data managers and statisticians. They are the one who actually program and analyze the data according to what the statisticians say. They have to make sure that what clinical data managers are enabled, and they have the right tools which programming can give to make sure that the data is clean. And they also make sure that the programming is done correctly, to make sure that the statisticians are getting the right results from the data, and they show, if the drug is safe, if the drug is not safe, if the drug is efficacious or not. So those are mainly the three people who are actually three groups of people who are very important in this kind of work. Then for statistical programmers, which is what I'm going to talk about, is there are multiple ways of being creative. As we know that we are talking about being creative and innovative. So the first set of things that we say is standard TLFs. So TLFs are tables, listings, and figures. Those are actually the way the output is presented to the whole gamut of people working towards the drug discovery process, to show that, these are the disposition of your sample size. Your sample in your particular trial is maybe like 50 people, 50 subjects. And this is their disposition. How do they look like? What are their demographics? Are they rightly randomized? Are they correctly? We have all the races represented here in this particular drug for this particular trial. So when we are trying to be creative as programmers, we try to see if we can do a standard set of table listings and figures, which are not differing from trial to trial, from study to study, which means that we know what we are looking at, and we don't have to spend a whole lot of time to look at each table, because we know this particular statistics is representing this. And if there are standard tables, listings, and figures that are being used from study to study within the company, then they are easy to understand and easy to grasp. So that's the first way I would say that programmers try to get some standard TLFs in place while working within the company, and to make sure that we are going to be more efficacious and more prompt in what we are trying to produce. Sadly, in our world, when it comes to smaller biotechs and not big pharma, these standard TLFs are very rare to find. Every company has a different set of people, and everybody likes to slice the data in their own way. So getting the standard TLFs in place, it seems very commonsensical that people think that, we should have. Unfortunately, it's not the case. So that's something that we always have to work towards. And once we have that, our programmers' lives gets really, really easy. Second, I think it's come to macros. in programming world, we all know what macros are. They basically help us redo the job with the similar kind of, produce a similar kind of statistics in a much efficient way and a much smaller time frame. Again, in a world of smaller biotechs, finding a macro library, if you can find 1 or 2 macros, you should consider yourself lucky. So if you are working as a programmer in a smaller biotech, you probably will have to put some sweat equity right there to make sure that you have some library, or as you go towards the study, make sure you are working towards building one. Because like all efficient programmers, we like to steal code from our older code and don't want to write fresh code every time. So that's another way to be creative and being more efficient, that we know that we have a robust macro library, which takes a long time to build. But again, if we are working towards a macro library as and when we start, that will always help us. And not only us, even if you have a team of 5 programmers, if they have a set of macros to use from, their code will somewhat look similar. And if somebody is out of town or out of work or out of office, the second person can easily take over that program and then update it as and when needed. That's because we have a same way of writing the code, writing the programs. So it's not too difficult for anybody else to grasp, okay, what are things that, what is this person doing? So that's a way to be creative and more efficient. The third part, I am a strong proponent is template programs. Template programs are basically starter programs which have the skeleton of the code already written. And for a non-programmer or a very experienced programmer, so to say, all the boring stuff is already done. All you have to do is put some interesting stuff which is related to your output, and then you can either replace the code, add the code, or edit the code. But you will have some skeleton of the program already there. Just change what is needed according to the output you are doing, and then go ahead and use that program. Again, I think this also helps a lot when there are multiple programmers in the team, and if you have to switch programmers according to their availability or according to the urgency of the work that you are working on. So, it's very similar to macros. The only difference is macros are a full set of, like a fully completed program, completed written code. All you have to do is pass on the variables and the output will be there. While template program can definitely need some work of writing code or editing code as and when needed. The other thing that we also can do is automation. Automation is something that we can schedule a program or schedule a job to run at a certain frequency that we are looking for, to make sure that whatever is needed, a data extract, for example, needs to be done every Monday. So you have scheduled a code and there is no human intervention needed if the scheduling is already done. When you come to work at 9 a.m. on Monday morning, you'll see the data will already be there for you to use. So I'm sure these are all the ways people have used in some way or fashion, but when we do a combination of these things in a smaller department, smaller company, it takes us to a long distance. We can do that. We can use a very small team of people can do a lot more work when all of these things are used in conjunction. Flexibility is another thing that I tend to say, which means that, okay, you know that you are not only responsible for your programs, you can be asked or you can be requested to update somebody else's program. And a lot of time of programmers who have not written their code, they don't like to go in and check the code or to review the code and fix the code of somebody else's program because they don't understand the nuances of that code because they have not written it. But if we follow all the points I've said above, macros, template programs and stuff, which then we can easily be flexible enough to take each other's code and to update the code as and when needed. Also tried not to use very, very difficult code to write. For example, not many people are in the world of SAS, not many people are familiar with hashtags or hash objects. A lot of time people tend to use code which is super efficient and elegant, but it's not good for team of 5 people who cannot take each other's code. And if you do tend to write a code which is a little difficult, then make sure it's well documented. Make sure you explain it right there in the comment section. What is that each data step doing? Why are you doing it? What are you trying to do that? So I think that's the kind of, that's what I mean when I say flexibility, that you should be open to whatever code is written to update and make sure that it is understandable to other people. In our world of clinical trials, make sure you are aware of latest guidelines from all the regulatory agencies. If you know that, then you are automatically efficient and you will avoid rework. You know, okay, what's the latest guideline? What are they telling us? Don't do that or do that. So you are doing it from day one, as opposed to first doing it, oh, I've always done it this way, and then realizing later on in the review cycle that this is not good anymore. So taking care of all of these in conjunction is what will make you a creative and the most efficient programmer in the whole world, not only in clinical trials, but any world. And I'm sure all the programmers would appreciate that. So that's all I have actually. And I think I have a few minutes early, but let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Sonali. That was great. I loved seeing that. And I think we'll also hear some similar themes perhaps from Philip. We do have some questions that are starting to come in the Q&A, which is awesome. Thank you, everybody. We will take those questions after our last presenter, Philip, gets an opportunity to go. So Sonali, if you'll stop sharing, we'll let Philip jump in with his presentation. Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem at all. Philip, the floor is yours. And if you'll do an unmute, we'll be ready for you. Thank you.
Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Perfect, yes.
All right, and let's see. Oops, sorry, I think something's happening on my other screen. So let me restart it. Bear with me 1 minute.
Sure, no problem.
Oh, okay. Can you still see my screen? Just to say the role of creativity and innovation, statistics and data science.
Yes, thank you.
All right, excellent. Let me all right, yeah, let me introduce myself. My name is Philip Lee. I've been so a little information about myself. So most of my presentation is about my career, my 12-year career so far in between WSDS and RTI. So I just want to mention the experiences that I have found to do a little innovation and creativity in my work. So I just want to frame what my presentation is going to be about. So a little thing about myself. I actually started programming in my senior year of college. That's when I first used SAS as a programming language. I first used SAS on a senior project in my economics class, where I do some data cleaning and manipulation, and I also do some analysis work, like regression and, for the classic classwork. I graduated from University of Maryland in 2009 with a bachelor's degree in mathematics and economics. So after graduating University of Maryland, I kind of struggled to find a job doing what we call as the Great Recession of 2008. So I actually didn't find a job until I was at until 2011, when I finally applied and got a job at WSDS, where I work as a survey processing staff, where I do various work from data entries to help organization of mailing of surveys. Oh, and I should mention WSDS is in Gettysburg, Maryland, and I'm also in that part of town, so I forgot to mention that's where I'm at. during my 2 years at Westat, I actually do a lot of manual labor that doesn't require any programming skills. But I did realize that I did find a lot of opportunities where there was a lot of tasks that can be automated using available software that was available on my desktop. This is like includes using Excel's macros and SAS. So during that time, when I was working at Westat, I know I would like to start using SAS, but I realized when I tried to install the software myself on my own computer to learn, that I realized SAS license was actually definitely really expensive. So one day I got the courage to go ahead and ask for my supervisor at work if I can learn SAS while on the job. And luckily she approves. So with that in mind, I kind of took the opportunity to like take lunch breaks to teach myself SAS programming. And I also like started to pick up programming books like the little SAS book to like learn through the techniques and all of the reading materials to basically get myself more familiarized with the programming language. So I actually have a couple of opportunities while at Westat to use SAS. And I remember there was a bug in one of my data entry projects where if the people didn't put the dollar amount correctly in the field, the telephone software will instead treat the value of a 0 as a missing. I remember during that time, my manager was saying that this was like a big oversight in their testing, and they were really worried about delivering a file to the client in a couple of days with all these missing entries. So during that time, my manager and a couple of the associates was basically putting hard copies of surveys and QCing in people that are known to like input the values that will be treated as a missing by the telephone software. It was at this point, we already have like data entry more than a year's worth of data, and it was time consuming to check all the work that was done by these individuals. So I remember I enacted a plan where I came in like 5:30 in the morning before everyone else. I use SAS to like import the database file using proc exports, and I do a specific where query just to like find the criteria that would lead to these missing entries to be in the telephone software. So I was able to like basically find out like which of the batches are impacted. And then when the team comes in early in the morning, I can say, hey, I think here are the batches that may have these missing values. And we were able to like split up the work, and we were able to check those impacted surveys in a short amount of time. So this was actually my very first experience where I was able to take some my real programming experience to like help make like an old-fashioned process efficient. It was also during this time after I did this little help out with the people at Westat that I also started to apply for new jobs, and one of the person from Westat mentioned about RTI, so I did a little research on them and found that one day they were looking for an entry-level statistician. So I kind of like applied it in mid-2013, and I applied one of the programs that I within at Westat, and I was interviewed at the job, and I guess the people here liked me, so they accepted me, and I been here ever since. So during my time at RTI, what I did, so I work on various projects, and they range from different statistical sets, such as drawing samples, populating tables, do some data cleaning and manipulation. I work on various projects that's ranging from health to justice surveys. During that time, I have opportunities to like read and understanding more of people's SAS codes and programs. I also like took 3 SAS classes and several SAS callable student classes that RTI provided. I also like do more reading, like read more stuff into like SAS macros and use those knowledge and input them in my current project to make them more efficient. So an example of the applying of what I learned, there was a project where we were like sampling children and like some key information were missing from a state, and we had to do like a manual lookup for the infected addresses. So this is like needed for like sampling. One trick I did use after reading the SAS macros book was to like write out SAS codes to a file and write out as comments key information that a person could do to do the address lookup. So this is like figure out which county the addresses is from. So I once basically we take that file, we did the manual process of like looking up the addresses. I used the SAS program to re-up that file, and then it will like implement the update in the SAS step. All right, next one. So I think the next step is that I want to talk to you about another project that I work on where I was able to use some creativity and innovation. And this is my current project that I mostly work on. It is known as NIVERS. And NIVERS is stands for the National Incident-Based Reporting System, and the records are collected by the FBI. So this is basically a very large administrative database with millions of incidents that's reported every year. So one thing that was a little twist to me on this project was that we can't use any paid software, and everything must be open source. So this means that I cannot use SAS, but we have to reuse my new programming language. So for this project, we did all of our work and analysis in the open source software known as R. So so this means that I have to learn how to do this new programming language. So how do I learn R? So doing my project with NIVERS, my task leader was able to provide me a year-long subscription that I can take to a course online, that I can take as many R classes I want. I remember that every morning I would like log into the computer and would take a class a day for about an hour. I would then take what I learned that morning and apply it to my current work with NIVERS. In the beginning, there wasn't much rush in terms of like deliverable with the client. So it was a perfect opportunity for me to like start learning all in the programming and also learn about the NIVERS database itself. So what I did bring over from SAS was like some very good programming practice. So for example, when after like we created recoded variables, I would like do a check and doing a check like a proc freak. And also like in SAS, when after doing various merges, I will read the SAS logs just to make sure that the merge goes exactly as planned. So in all, I also do this various things, but since we don't have like the logs or the list files, we use I use like functions to basically do my do the checks after like after we coded variables and after we merge like to do a various joins, like do a little dim statement of the before and after data sets to make sure everything goes as planned. So initially on the NIVERS project, the scope of the project was to create national estimates for about 12 topic tables. So as time went on, the scope of the project actually expands. First, it was like we had to figure out like how can we use our current work and from exporting like national estimates to the Excel workbook to basically generate a large database with estimates for estimates, bias, confidence intervals, and various estimates at different subnational level. The project expands from like increasing the number of topic tables from 12 to 33, and the generation of the estimates went from the national level to like what we call the 637 geographic permutations. This is like generate generate estimates at various levels such as national, regional, states, MSAs. So like for certain topic tables, like big number and the rest, we were also interested in breaking down the data instead of like using all the person's data. We also want to do like the various demographic combination of age, categories, gender, and race. So at first we were trying to like do all this work on a very powerful spec PC. We were like writing all functions, all programs and functions to read in control spreadsheet to do the various subsettings for the geographic permutation. And we were also having all programs to like generate codes to do the different demographic permutations. We were trying to use like various packages like in all, like the parallel and the FUR package to do parallelization to do multiple tasks at once. It was apparent very early on that having one or two powerful PCs were not able to do the work given the size of the task. So this is where a little creativity and innovation comes in, and a big teamwork to our data scientists. So I want to bring them in right now. So in our data scientists is actually women, and I work for both of them, and they greatly help bring this help on this project. So what they did, they were able to take all the statisticians all program and refactor them to make them run faster and efficiently in the cloud. They were able to parameterize and parallelize the programs to take advantage of the cloud to run our programs over hundreds of computers. It actually takes about a month running in the pipeline non-stop, and it does all the statistical tasks such as the outlier detection, demographic item imputation for missing demographic information, imputing missing agency monthly records. We also do weighting, data cleaning, and manipulation to create agency level files, and generating bias and variances for confidence intervals. And we also do a little suppression for estimates that we don't consider to be very good given the size of the data. So for 2022, we actually created a large database of 383 million estimates when everything is done. So, so just want to mention that from my experience, there were like plenty of opportunities to like incorporate creativity and innovation into projects. Sometimes the creativity and innovation comes during like a very tight deadline. Like I mentioned, like in my first job at WestStat and recently on this NIBRS project, where we had to implement last minute clients features as the production was running. I just want to mention, not all creativity and innovation comes to a tight deadline. I know on other projects I work on, I added new process after I learned like how processes were done in the past. So, got something, Cynthia?
Yes, thank you. We are running low on time, so we need you to wrap up. Thank you very much, Philip.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, I just my last sentence was that, you know, my grade 2 analogy to like find creative innovation was just always find like an old process, and that just like it was like running like in the fax machine back in the day. Hook that thing up to the internet, and you gonna see a very nice creativity and innovation happen for Unitas. So that's all I will mention. So I'd like to thank you for your time for allowing me to speak in this presentation today.
Thank you to Philip, and thank you to all who shared their experiences so far about creativity and innovation in data science and statistics. We have an initial question that I will read out loud, and we'll take it first to RENEE to answer. It says, how do you manage to be creative when resources are limited? And we were talking about this earlier as a group, maybe just in general, RENEE, if you could talk about some of the things that might feel like a blocker to innovation or creativity.
Yeah, I think interestingly, what I've kind of hadn't thought about in that way before, but what the other speakers have talked about was automation and macros being both a creative process to set those up, and then also enabling more creativity. Because for me, the biggest blocker is time, right? So if you're in a rush to get something completed, you might be creative to just get it across the finish line and have some interesting ideas, but also in the bigger picture. And something I have to take into account as a manager as well is making sure people have time to step away and think about how we should be doing something rather than just always rushing. So automation is a big part of that, and something that my team has done is built a framework that is flexible and extensible, so it doesn't lock you into one way of doing things, but it helps with our most common processes, making sure that we have reusable code templates like SONALI was talking about, that we are using a similar approach every time, and that for the most common, database writes and models, that we don't have to write the code to do that every time, that we have code in place that we can just now call a function, and I'll do it the same way and I'll write it a standard way. And also that's documented. So yes, to me, the largest blocker is time. Also technical challenges, right? Like if something's just not working, if some software is not functioning, or you can't log into a system, that to me takes me completely out of the creative process. Like I just need to be able to log in and expect things to work the way they should work. So it's always nice when you have good solid setups and people to help with technical challenges and things to make sure that just getting to the platform to do your work and having the time to do that, it's not eaten up by little technical challenges. So making sure you have a good system in place, good documentation, good functioning software, and that the managers are helping ensure that the team members have time to do something other than those manual processes, or that you're automating as much as you can, so that frees you up to be able to do more creative things.
Thanks, Renee. Sonali, did you want to add to that?
The only thing that I would add, Cynthia, is I agree with Renee 100% that your manager should be on the same page as you when you are trying to be creative and being innovative. I think that it's very hard to set up like, okay, this 3 weeks I'll just program macros. It never happens like that because you have project work, you have deliverables. So one thing I have realized that works in terms of limited resources is, as and when you are working towards a deliverable, make sure whatever code you have written, which you think is a great piece of code, which you can reuse, or which you think is a great piece of code which can be changed into a template program or a macro, do it right away as while you are working for the deliverable. Keep it on this, like copy it and put it in your library, which is, okay, this is the code that I can probably, if I come back to it, within 10 minutes, I can change into a macro, or within 15 minutes, I can change into a template. So if you do it while you are doing it, that's the only way you can do it and create a library, as opposed to setting up, okay, these 3 weeks, I'm just gonna code macros.
Yeah.
That's one thing that works with the limited resources and limited time.
Yeah, those are terrific examples. So I did want to share a couple resources and a couple sort of coach yourself questions for people if they want to answer these in the chat. We're happy to read some of these out. Something you might think about if you're trying to add more creativity in your work is to think about the conditions that make you feel creative. Perhaps it's if you're a morning person or a night person, or maybe it's teamwork or solo work. Perhaps it's a type of question, research question that makes you feel creative. And then also sort of the opposite of that. What stops you from feeling like you can share ideas? So these are some things to consider about, ways to create more creativity or add more creativity into your work. I'm a big fan of the Squiggly Careers podcast, and they have these wonderful things called their pod sheets. And so this is an excerpt from that. Episode 249 was about creativity in work. And so I would encourage you to check out that. I really like their definition too of creativity as practical problem solving. I think a lot of us consider ourselves to be problem solvers, but really it is the practical nature of that. And one example is that some people say, oh, well, I'm not creative because I can't draw or sing or dance or whatever it might be, but you can be creative through your work as a statistician, data science programmer. And sometimes we have different ways to be creative, that some people are idea generators. You can build lots of ideas, and that's your superpower, your strength. And there are other people who are maybe really good at whittling down a long list of ideas to what's going to be more practical. And what I love to do is to sort of pair those people up and think about how you can be, surrounding yourself with more the right kinds of people on your team to be united in that. I was a big fan of Renee's favorite slide because I had also made the same kind of slide about the research process and where you can add creativity into that. So I just wanted to put a shout out for great minds thinking alike. And then toward the last few minutes here, if there are more questions in the Q&A, we're happy to take that. I also wanted to point out that creativity is not just for improving our business outcomes, which is important. We do want to have happy clients who will come back and work with us in the future, to have successful drug discovery, to have well-adjusted students who are contributing back to the university, but it also makes us just happier in our lives and in our work lives. We will spend many of our years at work. So let's make those be happy years at work as best we can. And so this was an interesting bit of research that talked about the idea that it's good to have creativity, which they defined as the intersection of doing work that's original and adaptive, but also work that is applicable and useful. So when we feel like our work has meaning and value, that's where I feel like we get some of that stronger connection with the work that we're doing. I will add just a quick thank you to the sponsors, again, of the IDWSDS conference. Thrilled that we're able to be able to have this time to talk today, but also we'll open it up to any more questions that are coming from the audience, or if our presenters have any final words that they would like to share.
I agree with you, Cynthia. I think being creative just doesn't mean that you can paint or you can dance. But in my world, it also means, just like Philip said, you should be able to use more than SAS or more than R or more than Python. Being flexible and being creative that way also really, really helps to your creativity and being efficient and productive. Thank you. It was a great presentation, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I also agree that the teamwork aspect of it is interesting. I always feel more creative when I'm in a room brainstorming with people, and that's challenging when you work remotely. I've been remote since 2016, so sometimes being in a room by yourself can feel a little bit like stifling for creativity. So I make sure to make time to have time on Zoom with my teammates that's not just for a task, right? So I have time to just talk. We have something called donut meetings at work where it randomly pairs you up with a coworker for 30 minutes a week. And that's just to meet other people in the company. And I find that hearing what other people are working on and what tools they're using gives me a lot of ideas as well. So just scheduling time to have conversations and brainstorm is another excellent way to kind of spark your creativity, whether you're an idea generator or you're the kind of person that can narrow down from other people's ideas.
And Renee, do you ever use tools like Miro, like you did the little sticky note thing, sort of collaborate online, or does that feel kind of forced to you all? Have you tried that?
No, I just haven't tried anything like that yet.
Okay, well, we tried it recently with brainstorming and using the little sticky notes. And that was pretty good. I do know that at least in my team, some people need sort of private, quiet thinking alone time to be ready. And so we set up our Miro board in advance. So some people had their time to slowly iterate, and then we had a specific time where we were sort of working on it together.
Yeah, we do sometimes gather in person. Our company has a clubhouse model where people can go to the office if needed. And sometimes we'll purposely gather everyone together. So we do something similar where we'll try to get as much of the standard stuff and things to spark ideas out there and ahead of time, so that people that do want more time to ruminate on it can think about it ahead. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. All right, and final last word to Philip, and then we'll transition to our next set of speakers.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here with everyone today. I definitely appreciate having to hear everyone here talk, and that's all I want to say. I just really appreciate working here and I hope to find more innovation and creativity in my work as through like some of the examples I mentioned in my presentation today, and continue to working with great people to innovate and doing very interesting stuff in my work.
Thank you, Philip, and thanks to everybody. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording as we switch over to our next presenters. Thank you.